Hey, hello, what's up, and welcome into this week's episode of Geek Garage Goes to the Movies. I am your co-host Ted, joined as always by David. Hello, David.
Hey, Ted, how are you?
I'm doing well. I am very excited. I know I say that every week, every episode, but this time it is especially true because we are covering maybe my all-time favorite movie, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yes. Yeah. Normally,
Yeah.
Ted is just joking and he's humoring me. He isn't actually excited. He just wants to kind of blow smoke and make me feel like he's actually excited, but it's for real this time.
Yes, this is the first time I've been excited in 35 years. So, very excited, legitimately, to talk about this. We talked about this a bit on, actually, I think the last couple of podcasts. We mentioned it was coming up on the last episode
Right.
that we did, which was Joker, I
Yep.
think, and then we definitely,
Covered it on the practical effects.
yeah, we had a little bit of a segment on it. I don't know. We'll get into it, but man, this movie fucking rules. There's just not really any two ways about it. Before we get to that, a couple of quick things to go over. First, a reminder that we will be at GalaxyCon in November in Louisville, Kentucky. That is November 22nd through the 24th.
Yeah, represent.
Woo woo. We will be in the artist/vendor/merch alley. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but once you get there,
I think it's just one big room, basically. Like there's so much stuff that happens there.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they're like a lot of the celebrities and stuff that are making appearances, they'll be in there as well. So
okay, well, we'll see. I'm sure they'll have like maps and floor plans and all that kind of good shit once you get there. Yep. We're in stall K10, I think. Is that what the email said, David?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, K10. There's a couple of weeks or a couple of episodes that we're going to do before that, of course. So if we're wrong, and there's a good chance we are, we'll definitely correct that. But come say what's up. We'll have stuff to give away.
Yes.
And
cool swag,
high fives to give. Yes.
Yes.
Do the kids still say swag? I don't know. I'm old.
I mean, I wasn't aware that it went out of style, but then again, like I am incredibly incorrect on everything that goes or comes into style. So I don't know. I use it, and if people don't know what the hell I'm talking about, then I can use that opportunity to, one, feel old, and two, educate myself on what the kids are saying nowadays. So
that's true. Anyway, we'll have stuff to give out. We have a couple of different ideas we're kicking around. We're actually, I think, going to do an on the road to GalaxyCon podcast, so to speak, or a final preparation podcast for it that will cover in detail kind of the plan for the weekend, some stuff that we're going to be doing that's pretty cool, if I do say so myself, as well as, we'll finalize definitely what our location is. That is coming up. Again, that is November 22nd through 24th in Louisville, Kentucky at I think it's the International Convention Center or something. It's downtown. Right. You can just Google GalaxyCon Louisville and it'll pop up. Additionally, as always, spoiler alert for this movie that we're going to cover, John Carpenter's The Thing. Although if you haven't seen it by now, you should feel a deep, deep shame because your family is disappointed in you. But more importantly, I'm disappointed in you. And you should rectify having not seen it as soon as
don't
possible.
Disappoint Ted. He's done nothing to hurt you or your family. So go see The Thing if you haven't
yet.
Right.
Yet. But I will, in fact, hurt your feelings probably before the podcast is over.
I mean, if it hasn't happened already, he's hurt my feelings plenty of times.
Yeah. Anyway, so spoiler alert, like I said, I'm ready to get this going. David, are you ready to get this going?
I'm ready to get this
going.
Doesn't
actually matter. Hit the music.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's my assumption that you're a fan of this film, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, a little bit. I feel like I've mentioned that probably 400 times.
Right. Yeah. I think it's been brought up once or twice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I finally got a chance to sit down with this movie. I wasn't avoiding it for any reason at all. It just didn't happen for whatever reason. So, I've when I finally got a chance to see it, I was basically blown away. My overall thoughts and feelings were like, holy fuck, this is one powerhouse of a 80s horror film with lots of gnarly practical effects. And we said, I think it was the Joker episode, I mentioned something about how we didn't talk nearly enough about the Thing when we went over like different horror films that implemented practical effects, and we kind of figured like, hey, let's take this episode to talk about the practical effects and in more extensively, and as well as the other cool shit about this movie. So
And there's a lot of cool shit about this movie.
there really is, and now I get to kick myself in my own ass for not watching it sooner. Yeah. So do you want to start off with going over the story and plot?
Yeah, so it's actually it's kind of a simple story, and simple's not a bad thing. It's just not there's not 10,000 extra unnecessary things going on. It's a very straightforward story.
Yeah, it's one of those horror films where like less is more, and it really kind of banks on that idea, and you know,
Right.
mm,
It doesn't have a lot of exposition. Now, all movies have exposition, and not all exposition is created equal. So it has some, but it's always done in a way that it doesn't like beat you over the head with it. It's very well done, and
right.
it's also
It
very
flows
important.
naturally.
Yeah, exactly. It flows kind of naturally within the context of like whatever conversation is going on, because the characters, all the American researchers in this base, like they're just as lost as we, the viewer, are.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Essentially, it starts out and it shows what appears to be like a flying saucer crash landing on the planet Earth.
Hmm.
The date is not mentioned, but it's presumed, thousands and thousands of years ago, which is later mentioned in one of the exposition dumps. And essentially, it's just like a shape-shifting creature that takes over a host and then makes a perfect copy of that host, um, that has basically been woken up, I guess, from the ice, awoken from the ice,
Yes.
and then shit gets real.
Yes.
It's um, it's a weirdly coincidental. This is kind of weirdly coincidental that the movie, if you look at it a certain way, it could be like a parable about AIDS, where it's an infection that's not readily apparent. So, like with AIDS, just looking at someone, unless they're super advanced into the HIV stage, like you wouldn't know that they had it. And then it'll eventually kill the host. So the Thing also does that. It takes over, and you wouldn't necessarily know looking at it that it's a copy and it's actually the Thing posing at them before killing them. However, this is based on a novel from like well before the AIDS crisis. It is kind of like striking the similarities, though. Keep in mind, this movie came out in 1982. Sort of as that was taking off and was like really gripping, like had fear gripping people in the U.S. about it. It's just kind of one of those weird coincidences, but
Right.
again, the movie is definitely not a parable about that. It's just something kind of interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of really good foreshadowing. Carpenter is a fucking master. I will die on this hill. He's so underrated as a director. But there's a lot of great foreshadowing, and there's just a lot of great moments that the first time you view it, you're like, what? Why the fuck? That makes no sense. For example, there's a scene where Knowles, one of the characters, comes in and he's yelling at the rest of the guys, like, who threw their fucking underwear in my kitchen trash? Like, why the fuck would you do
Right.
that? And at first it's just like, okay, that's just kind of a weird, why would anybody do that? That's gross. That's weird. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then you find out later, like, that's one of the ways that the Thing attacks and kills a potential host, is like it enters in and destroys their clothing. It's
Oh
just one of
yeah,
those
that's right.
things where it's like you see it a second or a third time, and you're like, oh my god, this fucking guy, this genius motherfucker right here. But yeah, I definitely agree. This movie doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't really need to. Like I said, it's not like super
Right.
complex. It does have that mystery element of like, who is the Thing? Is this person the Thing? Is this person a human? But it's not like, it's not trying to fool you
Right.
necessarily, right? Or there's not like a twist, but it does a really good job of like presenting itself and being very, very, I guess, followable, which isn't really a word, I don't think, but it it doesn't dump everything and hold your hand and lead you to it. There's a lot of mystery about it, which is what really seals one of the things that really seals the
Yeah,
deal
yeah,
for it.
I definitely agree with that. It's, you know, it just everything that you mentioned, that it's not very exposition heavy. It doesn't hold your hand. It's a very stripped down and minimalistic type of, you know, horror film, and it's I think that that adds to the overall quality of the film. I mean, just all those things combined, like we're not even really accounting for like the characters and like specific events and, you know, practical
We'll
effects
get
yet,
there.
and you
We'll
know
get there.
we're just considering, you know, the story and plot and, you know, a few other things, and yeah.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah,
For sure.
I definitely agree with you on there.
Mm. Speaking of the characters, this is one of the few movies where horror movies, I should say, where the characters like make good decisions or what would be considered rational decisions based on the information available, right?
Right.
Like they're
That's like that's I think that's like the first thing I texted you as I was watching this, because I decided to watch it, and you were not here, obviously, but you know, I was texting you intermittently throughout, and I think that was one of the first things I texted. I was like, I so I don't really understand what's going on here, but these characters are making rational decisions, like the dude that they found or followed into, or like outside in the middle of the snow, like they just torched that motherfucker like without a second thought. I was
well,
like,
yeah,
well, they did that shit.
they catch him, you know, like they catch the thing like mid transformation, basically.
Right.
And rather than
But
fuck
you
around, they're just like, nope, this guy's got to go.
right,
Um,
because you know, in like some other horror movie, I mean, I don't want to point fingers at like a specific horror movie or time period as far as like classic or contemporary, but just we've all seen the films where like some fucker thinks that they're still savable, and like a hand is fucking growing out of their throat, and
that's like
you're
one of my biggest pet peeves with zombie films or zombie television shows, which shall remain nameless but are terrible and overrated. It's just like,
yes,
no, man, their fucking arm is missing. Okay, they're gone. Their
right,
face is falling off. It's over. It's done, son. But they're still just like they do that thing. Like, I love them, or that's my friend. No, motherfucker, that person is going to eat your face, and I'm going
right,
to laugh because you deserve it.
yes. And they all act like, I guess, quote unquote adults in that manner, like they all make,
Yeah,
like you said, make good decisions
I mean, you can,
for the
it's
most part.
easy. It's easy for the viewer, particularly on like repeat viewings, to be like, "Don't do that shit. That's a bad idea."
Right,
But if you really take a second and I guess think about it, put yourself in that character's shoes. Like, think about how fucking terrifying it must be to be stranded in Antarctica with no ability to reach anyone, and you have a literal shape shifting alien creature hiding amongst you, and you don't know how to suss it out.
right.
So you're just like, oh, fuck,
Yeah,
like
yeah. I don't.
from that perspective.
Sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't think I would fault anyone in this movie for acting or reacting the way that they did to certain events. I
Hmm.
mean, especially in the beginning when they're still like trying to figure out exactly what's going on, because like I can imagine they're already on edge being in fucking Antarctica, you know, just being so isolated and surrounded by like nothing but snow and just ice and cold 100% of the time, and you know they're all drinking JMB, and um so yeah, like they're already on edge.
An interesting thing about the movie with regards to the characters is that it doesn't give you a lot of backstory. So it's not just like this person was born here and then they did this and then they did that. It's just like they are who they
Right,
are. And some of them are kind of caricature-esque, I guess. So that's one of the faults of the movie is that not all of the characters are really fleshed out. Some of them you're just kind of like, okay, that's a body. You know
right,
what I mean? Um, but the flip side of that is it kind of works because since some of them are pretty, I guess, like archetypical characters, you immediately like have a
right,
familiarity with them. So like you have Childs, who is like one of the bigger physically people. So he's not a bully necessarily, but like he also um, doesn't back down and is like got a little
Right.
bit of a temper, and like everybody
Yeah.
knows somebody like that. You know what I mean? So the characters are like easily recognizable as, for the most part,
Right.
like real people
Yeah,
that
they're
you might
either
encounter,
relatable to they're
which
either
helps out a
relatable
lot.
to you personally or to someone that you've met before, like either gone to school with or
Hmm.
friends of a friend with, and or you were friends with. So yeah, that's um,
Kind of like
yeah,
everyman in a sense. The other interesting thing is like you don't know why they're all together, but they each of them has like a specific role, right? Like there's the doctor and the cook and the helicopter pilot McCready, which I want to do a bit of a deeper dive on,
mhm,
played by Kurt Russell. But like they all have roles, so there's not these extraneous characters where you're just like, why is that person there? Like everybody in the movie has a role, everybody in the movie has a purpose. um McCready is a phenomenal character.
yes,
Again, that's Kurt Russell.
just because of the hair
So
and beard
he's the
alone.
helicopter pilot. That is not hurting the situation. You are correct. He does have pretty glorious hair, facial hair, and
Yes,
just regular
I
hair in
am
this film.
jealous. As a bald man,
Goals,
I'm
goals as
jealous.
fuck. Yeah. It apparently took him a year to grow that, and I'm just like, I could do that, so I'm gonna try that. I'm not gonna do that. I'll get bored with that in like a week and a half, and be
Yeah,
like, cut my fucking hair off. But anyway, he's a great character. He's a helicopter pilot. It's kind of hinted at that he's maybe like a Vietnam veteran. That would explain a lot. Like he was disillusioned from the war, so he just like got away from everything
yeah,
basically, and went to Antarctica on this. In an earlier version of the script, that was made more explicit. Like that was explicitly mentioned in the finished script, and in the film, it's sort of just hinted at. Like he's got the
hmm,
olive drab jacket and some other things, but it does explain like his familiarity with firearms, his ability to pilot a helicopter. Um, and he has no desire to be a leader, but he gets thrust into that role, or I guess more so takes on that role because it's offered to someone else, and they're like, "No, nah, man, I'm not up for it." And then Keith David's character is like, "I'll do it," and he's just like, in one of the better lines, he's like, "I think everybody would be more comfortable if we
right,
had somebody
yeah,
with a little more even temper." Um, but there's another great bit of foreshadowing where in the beginning of the film, Mac is drinking J&B and playing like a computer chess game, and he ends up losing. And instead of just like taking the loss, he opens up the computer panel and pours the whiskey, the scotch into it, and he's just like, "You cheating bitch," and just goes about it. And and you're thinking like, how's that foreshadowing? Because it shows his willingness to just say fuck it and
hmm,
burn it all down, just abandon the rules, which serves him really well as all the rules they think they know are changed because they're dealing with this literal shape-shifting alien. And so he just says fuck it and burns it down, like literally starts setting fires and killing this creature with fire, just
right,
completely negates the rules. Which I thought was a really brilliant little piece of writing for his character. Just this throwaway scene where at first blush, it's just kind of comical. He's just like, "You fucking piece of shit." You're just like, it's just funny, like that he's just,
right.
he's the smart ass character or whatever. And then you start to really think about it, and you're like, oh fuck, that's who he is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It totally makes sense in the scope of his character in the grand scheme of things and how his character ends up at the end of the movie. So yeah, it totally makes sense to throw in those little things there. And
David, I know you mentioned practical effects a little bit ago. Do you want to talk about those and kind of mention what your favorite scenes
yeah,
were with
sure.
those?
So I mean, so just to put this out there, all the practical effects in this film are fucking phenomenal. Like every single one of them. I there wasn't one that I disliked. There were a few moments where that I thought were kind of cheesy a little bit, but like for the most part, this was like fantastic usage and implementation of practical effects in a time where people like they going in, they knew what they wanted to do in this movie, but they had no earthly fucking idea how they were going to accomplish it. So they just like started filming, and they're like, well, I guess we'll just kind of tinker with shit until stuff starts working the way that it needs to. Um, so that's kind of what one of the things that I love most about this movie. But anyways, so a couple of the scenes that I really like involving special effects are the blood test scene is probably my favorite, and I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
The autopsy scene with that was um, I think I'm confusing.
There
Yeah,
are several autopsy
I know.
scenes.
So I know that there's the autopsy scene, which is kind of like the first one of the first ones where they bring in the one of the bodies, I think, or the original body that they found, right? And and then there was
The first one is on the dog, I think.
yeah, they when they looked and saw that it was like still in the middle of its transformation or
Hmm.
morphine or whatever they called it. and and then there was the other one where they're trying to revive what's that character's name? Do you remember the with the
I
but
don't remember.
it's the yeah,
He has a heart
he's the
attack.
only or one of the few that like dies from not from the thing. Like he just gets a heart attack, right?
Well, so that's interesting because he's the same character who earlier is like, I'm not up to it, and is shown kind of like out of breath. It's sort of, I guess, up for interpretation how he dies. So there's one school of thought where it's like the thing tries to take him over, he has a heart attack
Mm,
because he's got a heart condition,
okay.
and he dies before the thing can fully assimilate. Another school of thought is that the thing fears getting found out, and so he fakes
Hmm.
dying because it wouldn't know like about resuscitation, so it would not
Yeah.
see that coming, so to speak. And then when he realizes, or when it realizes, like, oh, I'm fucked, it has to make
Yeah.
its
I
move.
and then so the autopsy scene that was really good, and then the scene that we are just referencing, I guess if you want to call that, it's not really an autopsy scene. It's when they try and resuscitate him. They get the paddles out, put him to
Hmm.
the chest, and the chest opens up and fucking bites the dude
Bites the
so
fucking
good.
hands
And
off. Yeah,
so that, and
yeah.
then the dog cage scene towards the beginning, where that's pretty much the first time you see like the thing and the dog's face opening up, which I thought was fucking fantastic. So I think the thing that I dislike the most about horror movies, like old, new, contemporary, classic, doesn't matter, is jump scares. Like I think they're fucking cheap and I hate them.
Well,
But
it's not scary. It's just surprising.
right, yeah, it like I mean, if you connect a quote unquote jump scare with like either visual or mental stimulation that's also horrific, then that's another thing. But if you're just trying to get people to shit their pants, then that's not scary. That's just scare tactics, I guess. But it's cheap and gimmicky. But like they actually use the jump scare uh, alongside the visual effects really well in these instances. When the dog's face opens up, that's a little bit softer of a jump scare. I mean, it is very surprising, but it's a little bit softer of a ease in compared to the others. I mean, you definitely don't see the fucking dude's chest opening up and chomping on dude's arms. And regarding the blood test, like, I mean, that one is just a master of building suspense. And I mean,
That is, yeah, that is my favorite scene in the film, and honestly, one of my favorite scenes in any
yeah,
film, just because it's like I've seen this movie dozens of times. I've just stopped counting. I've seen it so many times, and I know what's going to happen every time, and I'm still just like on
right.
edge.
Just giving you
It's just
anxiety.
so well
Yeah, no,
done.
It's great.
Right. It's just so well
Yeah,
done.
and just from beginning to end, like it crescendos perfectly with. I mean, it's not like, you know, like I was just saying, not a cheap jump scare that gets you, and then the scene, just ends. Like it crescendos with like the dude's head like basically blowing up, and then another like what is it, like a Venus flytrap looking thing comes out, and like a little silly string like grabs his head and pulls him in, and then the Venus flytrap crushes his head and throws him up against the ceiling, and all this crazy shit happens. You're like, what the fuck is going on? And that was like one of the second times I texted you. I was like, shit's getting real.
Yeah. Like I said, it just builds so well,
Right.
and it's it's not necessarily a surprise that they find out one of them is infected.
Right.
I just love that scene where they actually, the way they filmed it is like, that's a prosthetic hand when they do the close-up shot and he sticks the wire into the blood. That's a prosthetic hand.
Yeah.
And that allowed them to run up like the hose or whatever so they could shoot the blood out as it's the thing jumping out, jumping out in pain. And the way they do the cuts here, where it's like the person who's infected starts like seizing
Mm-hmm.
basically, and it cuts back to the other people, and of course they're all tied down to this bench and they're freaking the fuck out. And then it cuts back to the person who's changing and their head is melting. It's just like, what the
Right.
fuck? It's just it's
Right. And
terrifying.
they even have to like go outside, torch some people and then come back inside, and then Palmer fucking has I believe that's the character's name. He has like the best line maybe of the entire movie, but definitely of this whole scene, where he's
Uh,
like, if we're all done here, I appreciate it if you guys untie me so I don't have to spend the rest of my days tied to this fucking couch.
yeah, that's an all
Yeah,
timer.
so so good. And I just scared the shit out of my dog. He's like, "Oh, I'm getting out of here." RV's ducking and running for cover. Poor doggy. I'm an asshole. Oh well.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what I miss.
Uh, do you have anything to add as far as like practical effects? That was mostly me just like gushing over the practical effects. We didn't really go over like, I mean, with the exception of you talking about the prosthetic hand and all that. I mean, I know that they used like animal organs, like real animal organs for the autopsy scene, like the first one, when Doc was like digging around
Mhm.
in there. Apparently they actually, I can't remember who had the idea to do that, but yeah, they ended up using real animal organs to pull out, which was a nice touch.
Yeah, it definitely. Anytime you can make your effect more believable, and in this case, I mean, they're
Right.
literal organs. It's just like it's really a funny anecdote about that is that Wilford Brimley, who is the doctor, and that's doing all these like digging
Hmm.
around in the autopsy and everything. John Carpenter approached him and was like, are you okay with this? And Brimley grew up on a farm. It's just like,
Yeah,
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 this is cool, whatever. I don't care. And everybody else, meanwhile, is just like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna literally puke my guts out and die. And Wilford Brimley's just like, I'm gonna go ahead and stick, elbow deep into this
right.
carcass.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's
just
party.
like it's something that he's done before, which it sounds like he has. It is something that he's done before.
I would assume growing up on a farm, you probably get into some sick shit. Just by virtue of like having livestock or, cleaning up after livestock. I'm sure that you get into some gross stuff. So I'm pretty sure he probably has a cast iron stomach. Also, like Wilford Brimley's 1,000 years old in this movie, but he's really only like 40. It's insane.
Yeah,
Like Wilford Brimley has been 10,000 years old since like 1975. I don't understand it.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the diabetes. Uh, yeah,
Possibly
I
his walrus face.
well, I mean, like he does look, I guess, a little bit younger without facial hair, because I don't think he has any facial hair in this movie. But I've only,
Like a 5 o'clock
yeah, I've only
shadow.
known him with the that big buffalo mustache.
The
Yeah.
walrus mustache. Yeah.
Um.
The only thing I really have to add to the effects is this isn't an effect necessarily. It's just kind of a scene, but the the scene where you see the dog walking down the hallway, like kind of looking around, and at the time you don't realize that the dog is like infected. You see it go into a room, and there's a shadow on the wall of one of the people, like one of the research members, but the shadow on the wall is not actually one of the
Right. Right.
cast members. It was done by like a random crew member so that it wouldn't be obvious who it was, and it just like let Carpenter keep the mystery alive as you find out later that again the dog is not a dog, it's the thing, and now that person is infected. It's just none of those like great
Yeah, I
Carpenter
learned about
things.
that and the Wilford Brimley, growing up on a farm and only being the only actor that was truly 100% okay with the that gruesome scene and the other scenes from that documentary I was telling you about earlier. I forget exactly what it's called, but I just Googled it, and the first thing that came up was something on YouTube. And I thought maybe it was just a trailer. No, the whole documentary is on there, but I mean, it's an older documentary. You could tell that it came out not too long after the actual movie came out. I'm willing to bet it's at least a few years after the movie came out. I didn't look to see exactly what year it was, but Kurt Russell, he looks a tad bit older, and John Carpenter, he doesn't look like beaten down and defeated, because I know that this film did not do well at the box office whatsoever. So
It was a critical and commercial failure. Like this movie was called basically like gore pornography.
right, yeah, people
Um,
shit all over it, and on top of like being basically the one of the top um, budgeted movies of that time, especially in the horror genre. It, for that time period, like wasn't it like 14 or 15 million that he got for this movie? Um,
I don't know. I know that it was a large budget, relatively
yeah,
speaking, or comparatively speaking, and it was a complete box office failure. And I think a big part of the reason why is because it opened after
right,
E.T.,
yeah,
and so people were just like, no, aliens are fun and friendly and light up fingers. They don't kill dogs and, bite people's
right.
faces
It
off.
also opened up the same
Um,
day as Blade Runner, apparently. So
yeah. I mean, just think about that. That's fucking madness.
it wasn't just people like shitting on the film. Like he had some competition around the same time. So yeah, it was very apparent that people did not like this movie upon first watch, or you know
Yeah, and it seems like Carpenter took the failure for this kind of personally. So if you listen to him in interviews, like he seems to get really kind of somber about it,
Mhm.
and I can understand why. Like he really, like any artist, really put his heart into this movie and put his soul into this movie, and for people to be like legitimately, there were reviewers calling him a pornographer
Yeah,
of violence. It's just like what a fucking stupid ass shitty thing, fucking
right.
worthless thing to say. Um, I don't know. So it sucks. Like I said, Carpenter is. If we're going on times I've seen their films, John Carpenter is my number one, and it's not close.
Yeah.
Like number one director, and it's not close. Like not even. There's not another director that's with probably within 100 viewings. Um. So it,
Do
I kind of take it personally too. Fuck
Right.
critics that hated
No,
this
yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Fuck them. Do you know exactly what happened that made audiences turn around, or, turn a leaf or look at it differently? I mean, was it just the film aging a little bit and attracting a newer audience like that could appreciate it, or
I don't know, to be honest with you. This is one of those movies that probably cable had a lot to do with
okay.
it. As it got to a wider audience, people probably had more of an appreciation for it. Or maybe as horror movies became less like viewed as being less childish, I guess. Maybe it kind of got a reappraisal. I honestly don't know. But every critic who panned it in the first place can probably just never have an opinion about movies
Right.
again because they were terribly wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. They can go die in a fire. That's my final answer.
Yeah. 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 I agree. So it seems like we're pretty well in agreement that all the critics are trash and we hate them.
Yeah.
That
Fuck
includes
'em.
us
Yes.
somehow. None of that matters. So do you want to talk about the ending? Because
Yeah.
this is a hell of an ending.
Yes. I definitely agree with that. It's probably one of my favorite things about this movie is well, I mean, I feel like I've said that several times already, but this really is probably one of my favorite endings in horror history. Just the ambiguity of it all is just I found it really cool and fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely presented as ambiguous in like the filming and the like the narrative structure, but if you really like look at it, it's less ambiguous to me. Now maybe this is because I've seen it, like I said, probably 30 million times and have read a lot of Carpenter interviews or listened to a lot of Carpenter interviews where he's talked about it, and a lot of people agree with you that it's kind of ambiguous, and there's sort of like this, I guess, ongoing discussion you might say about is one of them a thing? Is it Childs? Is it McCready? And there's kind of different like
Right.
fan theories, I guess. I know one of the ones that gets brought up a lot is like in viewing it, you can see McCready's breath. Of course, they're in Antarctica, they're outside, it's well below freezing, so you can see his breath. Whereas when Childs is on screen, you can't see
Yes.
his breath. And a lot of people have pointed to that and said, "Oh, well, he's a thing."
Yeah.
But that's more just like a trick of lighting. There's also the fact that I can't remember if we mentioned this earlier in the podcast or not, or if this was something that we talked about um, off air or like in preparation, where there was the lighting choice to have people who are human, their eyes
Hmm.
their eyes reflect light, whereas people that are, well, not people, but characters that have been taken over and are now things,
Yes.
to have no light reflected. And I'm pretty sure that Childs is um, like, I don't think you can see light reflected in his eyes. I can't remember off the top of my head, and I feel like I should.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but I do know exactly what you're talking about. I know of that little trivia factoid because of the documentary I was watching, and yeah, it was
Right.
the director of photography, I believe, who made that choice to for the the non-humans to not have that reflection or catch light, is what it's called in photography terms or videography terms. But and then all the humans would have the catch light, and you can definitely see instances clear as
Mhm.
day in earlier scenes, like especially the one that they pointed out was the chair scene where, or the blood test scene where everyone's in chairs, and what's his name that ends up he starts convulsing and stuff. I can't remember that character's name, but you can clearly see, like, if you go back and rewatch it or just that one scene, you can definitely see that he does not have the catch lights in his eyes.
For sure. And it's a great little thing to like look for once you know to look for it. And we
Yeah.
kind of touched on this earlier, but like this movie is full of little things like that, where once you kind of know what's going on and you rewatch it, you're like, "Oh man, that's really interesting that, like the catch lights is a perfect example." It's just like that's such an interesting way of
Right, for
differentiating
sure.
between, human and non in the film. I know that
Actually.
canonically, like actually, uh, actually, so there was a sequel
Yes.
to the thing released as a video game, I don't know, probably like 15 or 20 years ago, not quite 20 years ago, 15 to 18 years ago, where you are sent in as like a special forces
Right.
rescue team to this Antarctic base where, they've lost contact. Um, of course, at the end of the film, Charles and McCready are sitting talking to one another, and like we said, they said, "Well, I don't think if we have any surprises for one another, I don't think we're really in any position to,
Mhm.
to do anything about it." And they sort of just resign
Right.
themselves to die so that the thing can't escape. Um, anyway, in the game that's a sequel, you go as part of this rescue team, like I said, and you end up
Mhm.
finding the body of Childs who has died of hypothermia or exposure. And then at the end of the game, you're actually rescued by McCready. So neither one of them is the thing, at least as far
Sure.
as that goes. Now, whether or not that's actually like quote unquote canon in the eyes of John Carpenter and whoever else was involved in the making of the film, obviously I can't say that with any
Hmm.
certainty.
Yeah,
But
I'd
to
I'd
my
be
understanding,
interested
it's like the accepted
to go back and
story
read up on the
continuation or
video game
sequel.
because I barely remember it coming out, and so, and I really didn't know about the tie-in with the film, and I honestly I forgot about its existence up until like a couple hours before we started recording, where I think you mentioned it and it might have been mentioned in that documentary. But yeah, I was like, oh yeah, there was a video game. I totally forgot about that. So yeah, it would be interesting to go back and kind of see if there's any literature or uh, documentation on the video game and see how it ties into the film, and if John Carpenter had a hand whatsoever in the writing of that storyline, or if it was basically just the game makers kind of taking artistic liberty with the writing of the storyline and the gameplay and all that.
Right, for sure. Another interesting point about the ending is that, well, there's a lot of interesting points about the ending, but one that kind of is another nail in the coffin against one of the two, Childs and
Mhm.
McCready, being a thing, is that the thing is not capable of replicating non-organic matter. So like it can create a perfect copy of organic material. So like a
Right.
person, it can create a perfect copy of that, or the dog, for example, but it can't do like glasses or an earring. And Childs, of course, has an earring that he still has in the final scene, which is just another thing where it's like, okay, that's actually Childs.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I was that wasn't really something that I thought of personally because I'm not a smart man, Jenny. But yeah, it's that's definitely a good point to make. And wasn't that brought up in the film, or is that just like a little factoid that like super nerds of the film know? Do you remember?
I don't think it's in the finished film. That might have been um, a deleted scene,
Mm,
or maybe something that was cut out of the script for
gotcha.
brevity, or something. I don't think it's just one of those like fan things, like you said, where it's like super
Right.
geeks get together and are like, well, according to the
Right.
laws of
Yeah.
this universe. No, I
Yeah.
don't think it's that kind of thing, but
Okay.
I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
well, I mean, either way, I mean that makes sense. Like, the how it basically replicated, uh, things that are bioorganic or whatever, however you put it. I forgot, but yeah, it would make sense for it to be like, hey, I can't replicate an earring.
Right, and I mean it kind of goes along with the facts that like the creature doesn't know how to react, so it just sort of mimics what the other characters
Right.
are doing, so it just kind of blends in. It, it makes sense. So maybe it is one of those just like according to like I said, the
Yeah.
laws of this universe kind of thing. But
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't know, man.
it could very well be one of those, well, actually, or, it could, have
Right,
some
right.
legitimate, backing to it. So,
So do you have any final thoughts?
I fucking love this movie, and I will,
You're
yeah,
welcome.
thank you for recommending it several times and finally forcing me to watch it. I will most likely view it again probably soon, just so I can try and pick up on all the things that I missed the first time around. I was told that generally around Halloween time, like Walmart will typically have like a John Carpenter uh, like 3 disc set of like a couple of his films, like The Thing and Halloween, and maybe something else, or maybe just those two on Blu-ray for like $9 or $10. So I may try and go find that.
That's a good Friday night right there, even if it's just those
Yeah.
two.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna try and do here soon is go find it, because I really don't feel like, I mean, it was like $5 to rent it on Amazon, and I really don't. I mean, if I spend another $5 to rent it, like, I might as well have just paid for the fucking movie. So
Yeah,
I
I when I bought it on Blu-ray, I got it from Amazon. I think it was like $7.99.
yeah,
So I mean, it's worth $8.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, even if it doesn't come along with anything else, or whatever, I'd still very much like to own this one. I'm not a huge, like, f- I don't want to say fan of owning horror movies, because that's not accurate. I just like the movies that I typically tend to like go buy and enjoy owning, just aren't horror, but I'm slowly getting to that point of wanting to own more horror movies, especially classic horror, 80s horror, uh, horror in that genre, where the rewatchability is more liquid. It's there, instead of, like, you watch it, it fucking floors your ass, and you're like, well, I'm never watching that piece of shit again, or like, it fucked me up for life. I definitely can't watch that anymore.
Right. I mean, horror is it's one of the few genres where it's like once you've watched it, like horror and mystery really are the two that stick out for this example. Is like once you've watched it, it's kind of like a lot of I don't want to say the value of it, but a lot of that like initial sort of
The
what
mystique.
yeah, what you want to get out of it is kind of gone.
Right.
But I mean, with Carpenter's work, with all of his work, really, but particularly the Thing, it's just like it really rewards
There's just so
multiple
much.
watches.
Yeah, there's, sorry to interrupt. There's just so much to appreciate, like the practical effects, and the acting wasn't. Yeah,
Cinematography,
the acting wasn't terrible. The cinematography was great. All those little things that you pointed out, that you know
Kurt Russell being majestic as fuck.
that fucking beard and hair is just that mane. He's like a
Yeah,
lion mixed with a
it's
unicorn.
an all time
Yes,
flex, all time
right.
flex.
Like, we are truly not worthy.
No, not at all.
Oh, what about you? You got any closing thoughts?
Um, I mean, I can't, like I said at the top and in the middle and at other parts and on the previous podcasts and in passing conversation, like I cannot say enough good
Right.
things about this movie. Um, it's if it's not my all time favorite, it's definitely in the running. It's so well done. It's just a masterwork of
Right.
sci-fi horror. It's so good that the sequel slash reboot slash prequel just like was dead on arrival because people were like, "It's not as good,"
Right.
and it will never be as
This
good.
was definitely one of those things where, I mean, you really couldn't make a case for a reboot or sequel. Like, I mean, the movies that, like, were kind of behind the time, where in terms of graphics, and you're like, oh yeah, well, I bet if they remade that today, like, they could use some better graphics or better acting or whatever, and make that movie that could have been really good back then great now. But, like, the Thing already had all those things going for it at the time. So, to me, it just, like, when
Right,
I remembered the remake coming out, and I was like, wait, wasn't this like a really popular 80s movie? Like, why the fuck are they remaking it? Like, what is there to improve upon?
right. And one of the big knocks, or a couple of the big knocks against that, like it's not really. It's kind of a remake, but it's technically a prequel because it takes place in the Norwegian camp. But it's like, what else can you really do, number one, that they didn't do in the original, which is technically a remake, but it's more true to the book than the original film. It's complicated, it's very convoluted, but like what else can you do in terms of story
Mhm.
beats or like transformations that you haven't already done, right? And then the second thing is, like you said, this is a movie that's very well respected and very well known for its use of practical effects
Right.
to, an amazing degree. So there was a lot of back and forth. So I think a lot of the crew on the reboot prequel wanted to use practical effects because, that's what the Carpenter version did, and that's what's really popular with it. But we covered this on the practical effects episode. Like CGI is cheaper. You can do sort of you could
Right.
do more with it because like it's just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
only bound by imagination. Like it doesn't have to follow the laws of physics or whatever, right? And some people push back on that, and they were like, "Well, I
Mhm.
mean, Carpenter's version with Rob Bottin's effects was like the shit, and it's terrifying." Where it's just
Mhm.
like, I know looking at this, like, oh, this is just bad CGI in the dark, you know. So, um, I watched it once, and it's not like it's a god awful dumpster fire of a movie, but it's just like,
Doesn't hold a candle.
right, right. And I don't want to say like it's pointless because that's dumb and dismissive, but it's just like I don't understand. Aside from, I mean, I know why it was made, money, right?
Right.
But it just doesn't hold a candle, and to me, it's like not worth. I was gonna say it's not worth viewing, which I disagree with, but like watch it and think for yourself and make your own, formulate your own opinions and
Sure.
all that. But like you said, it does not hold a candle to Carpenter's in
Yeah.
any capacity.
Yeah. I definitely. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I agree because I haven't seen it yet. I may eventually get to it. Maybe I'll like do a back to back viewing of that. Maybe I'll watch that, and if it's technically considered a prequel, I can watch it and then watch the original. So I might end up doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it literally like I think it ends literally where the '82 version begins with them chasing the dog in a helicopter.
Hmm. Okay. Well, yeah. Maybe I'll do that then. I mean, I'm interested to see it, but you know, I just from what you've said and what I've read, it's just the John Carpenter version is the way to
For
go.
sure.
So, but yeah, if you don't have any more closing thoughts, we do you want to get on with the fuck, what's it called?
Quick
The quick
hits.
hits?
Yes, the news you can use that
Yes.
will be out of date by the time you listen to this podcast.
Yes, it's a very snappy subtitle.
Yes, thank you. I'm very, well, not proud exactly, but you know. Anyway, first things first. David Cronenberg, director of The Fly and Scanners, and person that we discussed quite heavily on our practical effects episode,
Mm-hmm.
is going to write and direct a Netflix miniseries based on his novel Consumed.
And raise your hand if you're excited.
Yeah, I have
Uh,
not read Consumed, but it's David Cronenberg, which means it's amazing. That's
right.
just how it works. I don't make the rules.
Yeah, just by
So
default.
very, very excited for that, especially since Cronenberg, you know, he's an older gentleman, so he doesn't work. He hasn't worked a lot lately. So I'm very, very, very excited for that.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully he'll, come out of retirement like, a well-seasoned ice hockey player, and not like someone else just kind of fall flat. So yeah, hopefully whatever he does with this will be great.
Yes, that was announced last Friday, I think, or last Thursday. Next up, we have Nicholas Winding Refn is going to be creating and I guess show running / directing, or he's involved in some capacity in a Maniac Cop reboot for HBO. Maniac Cop, of course, was a character. It was a movie from the 80s, slasher film style movie with a part played by Bruce Campbell. But I'm interested to see what direction they take this. It's going to be a series, so I don't know if it's going to be like an ongoing series or like a limited series like
Sure.
Too Old to Die Young was. I'm just interested because I'm interested in seeing his take on horror. Of course, he did Neon Demon, which was a
Right.
horror movie in a lot of ways, but this is a
Yeah.
different sort of horror. So I'm
I
kind of just interested in his take. He's really, really
mm,
good at aesthetic choices and things like that. He's really, really bad about knowing when to calm the fuck
yeah,
down and just tell a story.
right. Nah,
And I say that as
I
a fan.
pretty much agree with that. I feel like he's really good at building suspense, maybe a little too good and self-gratifying, but for the most part, I feel like he's, the suspense that he's able to build, especially with dialogue-driven scenes, which, are scenes in a lot of his movies, and show. Like, I mean, when we watched the first episode of Too Old to Die Young, and we were like, holy shit, like how long has this poor girl been pulled over by these two pervert cops? And they're just like dragging it out.
Yeah, that was like a
Yeah, I
5-minute
was just
scene,
like,
and it
holy
felt like
shit,
about
like
5
I
hours.
I mean, my stomach was just turning inside out trying to figure out what the hell was going to happen because there was just so much tension being built. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested to see what he ends up doing with, a true, horror piece.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see him work, like, in a definite genre environment, so,
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. I had a couple things. So it was announced today that Zoe Kravitz was going to be Catwoman. We still really don't know too much about this The Batman movie. I believe it's prefixed with the word "the" to be The Batman.
Yeah, I think it is The Batman as the
Yeah.
title.
So really, all we know is casting basically for this movie so far. Just Robert Pattinson set to play Bruce Wayne slash Batman, and Zoe Kravitz cast to play Catwoman. And there has been talks about Jonah Hill playing the villain, but it's really nothing set in stone. It's just kind of like rumors as at this point. So
Right.
yeah, there's really not much to go on other than that.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the big rumors surrounding this movie is that it's supposed to be based on the Long Halloween story arc, which I'm 100,000,000% on board with. That's, like, probably my
Really?
favorite Batman story arc.
Okay.
Yeah, which is sort of the pseudo sequel to Year One, which is also a very good story. So I'm very excited. One of the reasons I like the Long Halloween so much is it features so
Okay.
much of his rogues gallery because it takes place over the course of like a year. Um, so each of his not every single villain, of course, because that would be madness, but a lot of the major villains from his rogues gallery have a piece in that. So it seems like it would be really hard to do that as a cohesive like 2 hour
Sure.
movie, but I'd be down.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
and I know
I'd be
like
down to see it.
so far since the casting is really all we have to go off of right now. There's definitely been some backlash as far as the casting of Robert Pattinson, but I mean, I'm trying to keep an open mind, like I did, and like a lot of other people did with Heath Ledger and then the casting of Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, and we saw how that all panned out pretty well for the most part. So I'm trying to keep an open mind, and plus it looks like he's trying to bring it in the Lighthouse. So
Yeah, yeah, I'm very excited for the Lighthouse. That opens up here this Friday,
right,
I
yeah,
think, and
so
then
hopefully
wider release next Friday. So
yeah,
I mean, he's a
right,
really good actor. He gets a lot of shit for Twilight, and I mean, deservedly because
yeah,
Twilight's
nothing,
what can you say that hasn't
right,
already been said about that? But I mean, he's a very talented actor. So just based on the casting of him and Zoe Kravitz, I'm in
yeah,
at this point.
yeah, it's a very youthful cast. Honestly, I don't think there's been a Batman this young. I mean, like Christian Bale was like in his early 30s, I think, when he.
I think he's about the same age as Pattinson is
Oh
now.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
uh,
I just think Pattinson looks
for
much younger
sure.
than Bale did. Like he's got a boyish face, and that's not
No,
a knock. He just it
yeah,
looks
yeah, for
youthful.
sure. Yeah, but I mean, either way, I'm interested. But moving on. So a few other things. Disney Plus today released, or I guess Disney released the basically entire film selection of Disney Plus once it launches next month, and it's extensive in a single word. It's basically everything that Disney's ever done, essentially. But one thing I wanted to note was that it was announced Gargoyles was going to be amongst all that shit that's going to be released on day one, and I was a pretty big fan of the show growing up. It was pretty dark, and I loved it for it. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to have the ability to rewatch this show. Ted, I don't know if you ever watched this when it was on TV, but it was a pretty cool show.
Yeah, I remember Gargoyles. I didn't realize that was a Disney show. For whatever
It
reason, I thought that was a
Yeah,
Warner
it
Brothers show,
might
but
have
it's
been, and then
irrelevant.
like maybe Disney bought it. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. Um, but Yeah, either way. And then, like, the last thing for quick hits was that I saw as of today, it looks like Joker has the potential to reach the 1 billion worldwide mark as far as earnings. And this is, I think, according to, I forget his name, but he's been like the person to analyze the financial side of the amount of money that movies gross when they're released in theaters, I guess especially worldwide, and he was predicting that it's has a very good chance of earning 1 billion worldwide, which I think would be pretty neat.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I know I was reading about it this morning and it held up really well in terms of second week box office. So it actually didn't experience
Hmm.
as big of a drop off as a lot of people anticipated. It actually had a stronger week, like percentage wise, than a vast majority of like the Marvel franchise films. And that's not me trying to take a cheap shot at Marvel. That's just like an easy comparison to make since they're both comic book films. It's really
Yes.
interesting that this movie is doing so well because it's R rated. And I think we're kind of past the point of saying
Hmm.
like R-rated movies don't sell because
Hmm.
that's not true. I mean, like Deadpool made a shitload of money, Logan made a shitload of money. Um, It Chapter One made a shitload of money. I don't think
Yeah.
Chapter Two made as much opening weekend,
Yeah.
but I mean, it went gangbusters to an extent as well. And this one like beat all of those.
Yeah, I think one of
Like it's got the
the
biggest
big
October
things,
box
I
office
could be wrong,
ever.
but this is just me, throwing it out there. It seems like it might be doing really well, or that it did really well on its second weekend is because of, I guess, the controversy or all the talk behind it. Because like there has been so much talk about this movie since like since it was released, before it was released, and it's been for the most part very polarizing. People either loved it,
It's basically a fucking cottage industry of
right?
takes sprouting up
Yeah,
about this
and
movie.
it seems like with that, people don't know who to trust. Like there's just they're getting pulled either way, so they have no choice but to go see the movie and make up their own minds. And to me, that seems like a very arguable reason why the movie would do so well on its second weekend.
It's possible. I think a large part of this, or at least a part of it, may be that people are
Mhm.
wanting something different out of like than a typical
That could be it
superhero
too.
movie, quote unquote. And I think this definitely delivers that. It's definitely not your run of the mill comic movie in a lot of ways. It's still undoubtedly a
Mhm.
comic movie, like I said on the podcast about the movie that we did, but it's definitely not the same as like
Right.
Shazam was or the DCEU was or what have you. It's that's not a
Hmm.
plus or
Yeah.
minus. That's
Yeah.
just a
Very
statement
true.
of fact.
So that's all I think we had for quick hits. You want to cover shit that doesn't suck real quick and sign off this bitch?
Sure. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So this past Friday, a very well anticipated movie that no one really asked for, but we're all, for the most part, kind of glad that we got was El Camino, the Jesse Pinkman follow up to the ending of Breaking Bad. And if you haven't seen it, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it for you. All you need to know is that you should definitely fucking watch it because it is amazing. It burns like a Breaking Bad episode, specifically one of the slower episodes. Like if you recall, maybe like the episode like The Fly, or I'm trying to think of another good example, but it just burns very slowly, to the point where you kind of lose track of time, like I did, and I was like, oh my god, is there anything that's going to happen in this movie before it ends? Because it's only like 2 hours long, and but yeah, shit definitely happens, and I was very excited about the idea of this movie, the fact that it was mainly focused on Jesse Pinkman, who is I think for the most part the fan favorite. I know, like, there's some hardcore Walter White fans out there, but like I don't know, they just did a really good job with it, and I was very happy with the movie in general. So yeah, that's my shit that doesn't suck. El Camino.
Right on. Um, I went and saw Ad Astra Saturday night, the Brad Pitt sci-fi movie that came out about a month ago. It had gotten a lot of very
Hmm.
divisive reactions. So a lot of people really loved it. A lot of people really hated it. I heard a lot of different things about how it doesn't really know what kind of movie it wants to be. It's tonally kind of all over the place. But I figured, I got Regal Unlimited. I
Right.
may as well fucking use it. And so I went and saw it. I personally don't know what movie the people who said it didn't know what it wanted to be and it was tonally all over the place watched, because it wasn't the same movie I watched. It very clearly
Oh
was
yeah.
tonally consistent. It's definitely a sci-fi movie. So if you're into that, you'll be into, if you're into sci-fi, you'll probably be into this. It's like one part 2001, one part action. And I know that sounds tonally inconsistent, but it works. The performances in this are great. Brad Pitt gives his second Oscar-worthy performance of the year, in my opinion, as well as supporting cast. Tommy Lee Jones plays his father, and Donald Sutherland is in the movie for about 10 minutes and should be in it for a lot longer. Um, Again, that's just my opinion, but I dug it a lot. Like I said, if you're into sci-fi, you'll probably be into this. It's worth seeing on the big screen just because it is such like a, it's a movie about space,
Sure.
man. See it in the biggest screen you can and the best setup you
Yeah.
can. So I recommend it, especially if you've got, like I said, I use my Real Unlimited on it. So if you've got that or the AMC A-List, I think it's called, or something
Hmm.
similar to that, I mean, what do you got to lose really, other than a couple hours? But it's definitely very good, very
Cool.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'll probably end up checking it out whenever it comes to DVD, uh, unless I end up, you know, springing for that Regal Unlimited pass, which let's face it, I'll probably end up fucking doing that. So,
Yeah, it
yeah,
rules. It rules
yeah,
hard. I actually back to backed. I did a Brad Pitt double feature. I did that, and then I immediately left the theater and went into the theater next door and saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for like the third
right.
time. And yeah, that's going to be my movie of the year. I don't. It's like that and John Wick 3 are vying for which one I liked more, and it's
They're,
it's a tough one. I'm gonna have to back those on
yeah,
DVD and be like, all right, which one of you
because
motherfuckers?
yeah, they're both fucking good.
For different reasons, but yes, they're both
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, yeah, very different reasons, but I guess one thing we didn't really talk about in quick hits, but it was announced here recently was I don't know the name of it, but it's like a John Wick spinoff. Did you hear about that? The ballet thing?
Yeah, so it's currently
Yeah.
titled Ballerina, and from what I'm gathering of it, it is a John Wick
Hmm.
universe movie, or a movie centered in the John Wick universe, and I think it's supposed to be based on a character that presumably came up in the Russian school, I guess,
Hmm.
that you see in John Wick 3. And she's an assassin. So I mean, like, I'm anything
Hmm.
that's set in the John Wick
Yeah.
universe, I'm in flat out immediately. One of the things I saw a lot of people responding was like, "Why don't they make more Atomic Blonde movies? Why
For
don't you
real
shut up
though.
and let them do
I
both?"
mean, I'll go see them all.
Right? Like, I would be. I liked Atomic Blonde. I thought it had a lot of problems, but I still liked it.
Hmm.
I'm all for Charlize Theron being a badass, just like I'm all for whoever they cast in this movie being a badass and doing John Wick like things. Like, just give me all the John Wick movies, put
Please
them in
and
a
thank you.
needle, and then inject them directly into
Yeah.
my veins. Yes,
Yeah.
I will chase those dragons
I mean,
forever.
that's definitely something to look forward to, as well as what seems like more John Wick movies, which we'll keep on going until we die. Keep on going to see until we die. So you know,
Yes, yes, I 100% will. Um, I'm also realistic in that, Keanu Reeves is like 54, so I can't imagine he's got too many more of these left in him. But that said, I will be um, in my preferred theater seat the day that John Wick 4 opens, for goddamn
yeah,
sure.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I guess that will do it for this episode of Geek Garage Goes to the Movies. Ted, it was awesome talking about the thing, and yeah,
It was.
like I said, I definitely am looking forward to revisiting this movie here soon. Hopefully, I can find it on DVD, so I don't have to go rent it again. So yeah, do you want to hit us with that motherfucking sign off line?
Yeah, so watch the movies thing. I don't remember it, but do that anyway. Watch more movies.
You mean watch more movies because movies make life better?
Sure, that's the thing
Yes.
that I'm supposed to say.
Yes, that is the thing, and that's all right. Like that's why there's two of us, is so when I forget things, you typically know what I'm talking about, and then vice versa.
Mm,
Except
yeah.
like it's more along the lines of like I forget shit constantly, and then you smacked me up the side of the head saying, "Hey, this is what we're talking about." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I totally forgot because I'm an idiot."
Eh,
But you know,
eh.
that's just the way it goes. So yeah, that
We forgot to do the social media.
we're not on social media. I'm just kidding. We're on all the social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're not on anything else. We'll probably never be on Snapchat because we're too fucking old. And I don't know how TikTok works. I know that's a big thing right now, but we're not on it. I don't know what we would do.
We should get a SoundCloud because I think the way it works is that you get on SoundCloud and then you get a
Yeah,
record
you know what?
deal.
I've heard that several times that like, you know, specifically SoundCloud, you get on there, you send people some links and all of a sudden, boom, you're famous. So
I feel like I have a very solid future as a mumble rapper because I can mumble and I like rap. So I feel like those are the
right,
only
and
two
it's just a win-win
qualifications, really.
situation. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
pursue that
yeah.
right after this episode. So yeah, I'll help you get started.
Yes.
I know nothing about rap, and I stumble over my own words. But maybe if mumbling's involved, then I can pull something off.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, but yes, definitely hit us up on all the social media.
Yeah.
Use
Use the Google machine and just search for Geek Garage Podcast. You will find us,
yes.
whether you want to or not.
Right. We are on all the podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify. We're on YouTube, a bunch of others. Yeah, I think that's just about it.
Yeah. Leave us a like and a review.
Please.
Not a bad review though, so we encourage lying.
Yes.
Definitely lie about it. Say that we're good. Come say what's up in Louisville at the Galaxy Con.
Yes, definitely.
November 22nd through 24th. We'll be the people that look out of place.
Or maybe severely in place, depending on who we end up seeing there.
That's true.
You never know. I mean,
That's
I will
true.
probably be rocking my Spider-Man costume at least a little bit. So yeah,
I think I too will be in costume.
Yes. I'm excited to see what you end up choosing as your costume.
I think I'm going to go as the rational consumer.
Best?
No, I'm not going to be in a costume because I'm not 12. But do come say what's up. It's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
Do the social media thing, and then also do the movies watching thing that we talked about. So do all those things. This is not a clickbait.
Do it all now, damn it. All right. We'll catch you next time, folks. Thanks for listening. Bye.
All right. Peace.